Well, helping us to unpack this and other political stories making headlines today is political analyst Dr. Imraan Buccus. Dr. Buccus, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. So yesterday, of course, we saw the DA laying those criminal charges against the Minister of Higher Education and Training, Dr. Nobuhle Ngabane, ahead of her tabling of her department's budget in the National Council of Provinces. Today, true to form, it came for Human Settlements Minister Simelane, linking her to theft and fraud, calling her to account. Just your reactions to what's unfolding currently. Dr. Buccus, can you unmute yourself, please? Thank you. You can go ahead, sir. All right, we seem to be having a problem with your sound, Dr. Buccus. I'll ask our control guys to just see to that. Of course, we'll come back to that interview in a moment. Let's take you now to this development. The Freedom Front Plus has returned from its visit to the United States. At a briefing at OR Tambo International Airport this morning, FF Plus leader Corne Mulder and founder of the Africa Initiative, Chris Opperman, spoke about who they had met and what their main concerns were. Now, the talks included issues around the Afrikaner migrants, the land expropriation bill, and how to improve South Africa-US relations.
I want to start off by saying we did not go to the United States to complain. We were not going there as a complaint group that just want to go and say, this is bad, this is bad. That's not why we went. We made it clear right from the beginning that we would like to see our country prosper. We would like to see that our country is a success in terms of becoming, once again, a winning nation in a winning country. However, we are of a view that there are certain challenges that are making that very difficult and that are preventing that. And if we want to succeed, we needed to discuss these things in a very frank manner, and we did. I was amazed, and if I can just say this, Mr. Chris Opperman, who accompanied us, is based in Washington. Chris was a member of South Africa's Foreign Relations Department for many, many years prior to 1994, and he also served since 1994 for a stint. And he was able to assist us in terms of getting doors to open for us to be heard. And he will refer to that just now and give you his impression of what happened. I was impressed in terms of who were prepared to talk to us, who were prepared to see us. One of the important things that we came with after the visit was the request that we should communicate to South Africa, that we should communicate to the government, that in order to reset relations between the United States and South Africa, the White House, the Trump administration has got 4 specific, non-negotiable preconditions. And immediately it was queried afterwards by some. Some said, but that sounds very strange. How is it possible that the Trump administration will interact with a delegation like this and not officially with South Africa in terms of DIRCO? The reply was, they have done so. But they are concerned that it seems that they are not heard. That the things that they put on the table as preconditions to reset relations between the United States and South Africa is either not taken seriously or is not being heard.
Our value proposition is assist us to do that investment. We do not claim as South African farmers and South Afrikaners that we understand Africa. We know that we do not understand her, but we understand her much, much better than the Chinese or the Dutch or the Brazilians or the Americans or any of the other aggressive investors in the agricultural arena. But what we need to unlock the wealth of this continent and to make a contribution is a policy environment which is conducive to profitable farming. We are gradually losing that even in South Africa. You cannot invest in a country which is threatening to expropriate your property, even at no compensation. You cannot invest in a country where you are not safe, where you have farm attacks and farm murders. You cannot. We need a policy environment which will safeguard investment.
All right, let's try Dr. Imraan Buccus again, just to help us unpack this and other political stories that are making headlines today. Dr. Buccus, thank you so much for your time. So yesterday, as I was saying, the DA laying those criminal charges against the Minister of Higher Education ahead of her tabling of her department's budget and not also voting for the Human Settlements Minister Simelane budget today, linking her to theft and fraud. Calling her, in fact, to account. Just your reaction?
Well, I was saying earlier that politics is about the balance of forces, right? And I think with the dismissal of the deputy minister from the DA, that sort of placed the DA on the back foot. And this kind of action is not surprising at all. One may have one's critique of the DA, but I think if one engages in political seriousness, one needs to acknowledge that the DA has some kind of legitimacy in the point it's making. Because really, when you have ministers who are corrupt, there's no credibility, and it also compromises institutions of the state. So I think the action we're seeing is action that's not surprising. We don't want public trust to be corroded, especially 30 years after democracy. And, we have a context where what's building is what we call democracy deficit, where people are increasingly losing their faith and losing trust in the state. And I think when you have corruption and you have people looting the public purse, that really makes our situation a lot worse.
Now, the DA not only filed these criminal charges against the two ministers ahead of their budgets, but the party has also accused President Cyril Ramaphosa of refusing to take action against the ANC corruption in his executive. Talk to us about the mounting criticism of alleged double standards against President Ramaphosa within especially the GNU after, of course, as you've mentioned it, the dismissal of Andrew Whitfield over an unauthorized overseas trip while he does not act on those implicated in wrongdoing.
There's a growing critique that President Ramaphosa does not act decisively. And I think we're seeing this here also. I think, on the part of the president, he needs to start to build political legitimacy, which, like we were suggesting earlier, is fast eroding. If one looks at eligible voters in the country, only a third pitched up to participate in the elections. And I think that's a clear sign that political legitimacy is growing. And when there's, this perceived idea that the president is not acting against ministers in his own party, I think that does not help the situation we find ourselves in. Of course, the GNU is also new to us, right? Besides the first term, Mandela's presidency, one may call that a kind of government of national unity, but really South Africa does not have much experience. And I think the architecture governing this GNU, is not a kind of architecture that is really helping us, navigate much of the difficulties that we face.
I want us to change focus a bit and just go to what we saw in terms of the Freedom Front Plus holding its media briefing today. And just in line in terms of what you're saying in terms of the GNU and how new it is, and of course how some of the political parties within it will act in certain ways to make their grievances heard, so to speak. What do you make of the Freedom Front Plus going to the United States, also accompanied, of course, by the founder of the Afrikaner Africa Initiative, Chris Opperman, holding talks with some leadership of the United States, of course, talking about issues that are very sensitive to South Africa, the land expropriation bill, and how to improve South Africa-US relations. What do we make of this particular trip? Of course, it is the latest.
Well, if you have the kind of government that you have in the US right now, and when you start to see a kind of legitimizing of a whiteness that's in many ways toxic, and you have the kinds and types of people who visit the US who certainly don't speak for government, but who capitalize on that political space. I think that's really worrying. The idea is that parties in the GNU are really opposed ideologically. South Africa, as the South African government, the ANC, has a relationship with the US that's carved by our history. And I think there are protocols that govern how one undertakes a visit to the US, how one engages the US on really, matters that are sensitive. So I think it's really worrying that a party like the Freedom Front Plus and others that are linked to it, and many NGOs that and think tanks that are right-leaning and have views that might not cohere with the government. And I think that kind of stance, is worrying and needs to be addressed in a really urgent way.
As we wrap up our conversation, Dr. Buccus, I want to weigh in just on the sustainability of the GNU and perhaps an opportunity here for smaller parties within the GNU. They say, of course, that they're not fazed, at least some of them, with what's happening between the ANC specifically and the DA. Your take in terms of how they can then wield or start wielding their power within the GNU?
Well, I think, again, it's about the balance of forces. I think both within the DA and the ANC, you have, fragmented camps. I think, there might be a pocket in the ANC that wants to continue this relationship with the DA. And of course, we know there are pockets that don't. And the same applies to the DA. We've seen that in the machinations in the recent past, where there's a pocket that wants this to fragment even more. But I think, this GNU that we have is in many ways, like many would argue, perhaps the better option, arguably. And people are concerned about, other parties that may come into the fray. We know the EFF in many ways is imploding. We've seen what the latest poll is saying in terms of its potential electoral support if it were to go to elections. So I think despite everything, the DA is not willing to walk away, and it doesn't seem like the ANC is fully willing to push them out. So I think it's a fragile marriage, but for the foreseeable future, it's going to continue to have problems. But I think it'll probably hang on and continue in this way until something even more drastic occurs.